Wanted to get that notification so I could say got it. Okay, so yeah, I want to share with you some of the things that we found in a number of presentations, working with parent groups and community groups. I think that there are some things that we really need to be focused on with regard to early education and care. And so I want you to put in the chat, please, think about the future. What do you think is going to be most different in the future for the kids that you're caring about now? What do you think are the issues that they are going to have to deal with? And you know, not to be a negative, but what worries you most about the future of our kids? But the reason why I'm asking you to think about this, quite honestly, is because we're not just educating our kids for now. We're educating our kids for tomorrow. And if we don't have a good feel for what that tomorrow is going to be like, we are going to potentially miss some important preparation that we are going to want to give to our kids. And so it really is in that light that I'm raising this question for you to think about. And please do put your thoughts about this in the chat box. Right. Again, what are the issues that our kids are going to have to deal with? What are we most concerned about as we look to the future of our children? These are the things that I think we have to pay some attention to, right? Social skills and regulation, connection, problem solving, mental health. Yeah, right. I mean, I think we're on the same wavelength here, and that is that we really have to be thinking about the fact that no matter what happens in the future, and we can't predict the future as accurately as we might like to, but no matter what happens in the future, one constant is the importance of carrying interpersonal relationships and our kids' social, emotional skills and character. This is something that is going to be relevant for our kids. And this has a lot of implications as we think about their care. You know, John Whitehead has a quote that I really value. He says, "Children are the living message we send to a time we will not see." You know, in the early childhood field, we don't always get to see what happens to the kids that we care for so much. We sort of care for them, we nurture them, we send them off. We want to send them off with the best preparation possible. We also want to be mindful of the fact that they're going to be encountering a lot of things that we can't predict. And so in light of that, we want to think about what do we know with certainty about how to prepare our kids for the future. One of the things that we know is a Bantu saying that a person is a person through other persons. And that is that it's not all about us as individuals, it's all about us collectively. And that, you know, as Martin Luther King Jr. said, I cannot be what I can be unless you are what you can be. And so each of our kids' development is interdependent with the development of people around them. And so we have common cause to make sure that all of our kids are getting the best development possible. And so implication number one means that our focus on testing and thinking that the kids' ability to master standardized tests is going to be sufficient for them to navigate this complex world, well, that is not a tenable notion. I'm not sure it ever was tenable, but it certainly is not tenable now. And more than that, research indicates that we have set our sights on the wrong indicators of future success. Just give me a quick number in the chat box. What do you think is the dropout rate from college currently? What percentage of kids do you think drop out of college? Just put a number in the chat box. 35, 60, 20, 25, 30. It's close to 50%. But the number is different for kids from more disadvantaged backgrounds and kids of color. Then we're close to 80%. And Savitz, Romer, and Buffard wrote about this in Ready, Willing, and Able. But the key point I want to convey to you is that when our kids drop out of college, it's not because they're not smart enough. It's that all we did was try to get them to the college door without thinking of what do they need to get through college. And it turns out that what they need, social, emotional, and character development, that is the crucial complex of abilities that actually helps them get through college. And not only that, it's the same story for careers. That yes, kids can get a job, but to advance in a job depends at least as much on your EQ, on your emotional intelligence, as it does on your IQ. And, the world of work understands this. The National Bureau of Economic Research says that skills such as problem solving and communicating are essential skills we want our kids to have. And look at the top 10 skills identified by the World Economic Forum. I mean, this is the World Economic Forum. This is not like a sort of a touchy-feely organization. They're concerned with the bottom line. And what do they want our kids to know? They want our kids to come into the workplace with complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, people management, negotiation skills, coordinating with others, good judgment and decision making, right? So you see where we're headed. Indeed, surveyed executives say that they'd rather college build up students' life skills than the technical skills because the companies know how to build technical skills, but they're not really too good at building life skills. And look at the one on the bottom. Bank of America teaches empathy in-house. Wanted employees who can shake hands, make small talk. And these are things that, quite honestly, the COVID situation has challenged us to do, right? So this is what we have to think about. Young people are more likely to graduate college and advance in their careers if they have social, emotional competence and character. And so we have to start early. That's why your work is so critical for so many reasons, but not the least of which is that we are sending our kids off to a better future. Indeed, we must prepare our kids for the tests of life and not only a life of tests. All right, so now let's talk about how we do that and how we do that in the COVID context, or let's put it this way, how the COVID context guides us. So the first thing we have to understand is that in our brains, there is not an academic part of the brain that you can develop independent of every other part of the brain. And I mean, you work with young children, you know this maybe better than most people. The kids are highly emotional. They're not cognitively driven. And so they want to be in a warm, positive, welcoming, supportive environment. That is the petri dish of nurturance of all of our kids' abilities. If we don't provide them with that warm, welcoming, positive environment, no matter how enriching the environment is, the learning will not stick. And from an early time, we can give our kids instruction in social and emotional skills. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but why is Sesame Street so effective? Why is Nickelodeon preschool so good? And the reason is because they systematically and explicitly build social and emotional skills into their programming because they know young kids need to get it. There's a reason why when you watch Blaze Monster Trucks or any of the myriad other programs on Nickelodeon, there's a reason why the characters are structured the way they are, that there's an impulsive kid, there's an impulsive truck, there's a problem-solving truck, there's a reflective truck. I mean, they are modeling for kids the range of skills and what it's going to take to be effective. How many of us have seen Grover go near and far, right? We've seen that program, near and far. Well, what a crucial cognitive concept that is for kids to get. Eventually, our kids are going to have to learn habits of mind that involve curiosity, explaining their reasoning, not just finding the right answers, not just circling the bubble, the right bubble. They're going to have to be good problem solvers and good communicators. Now, you know, for very young kids, we say, oh my gosh, you know, is that really relevant? Well, it is relevant because if we don't provide that warm, nurturing environment, our kids don't grow to their potential. And so that leads us to think about what are the real challenges of COVID-19. So these challenges are both for the kids and they are for the caregivers, that emotions are heightened, that we feel a lot of stress. Feelings of loss and anxiety are constant. Many of us have experienced losses as a result of COVID, and they don't just disappear. They stay with us, the consequences of those losses. Relationships get strained. So many of our bandwidths are being tremendously challenged by challenges at home, challenges at work. This leads our creativity to get taxed. It leads polarization to be up and listening to be down. And this is a critical reason why it was so wise to have this recorded. Because when we're under stress, our ability to listen carefully and retain is impaired. And we'll talk about this. So think about this for a little bit and what you think the implications are for your own work. What do you notice in your own work that some of these challenges lead to? Right? And you could put some of that in the chat box if you wish. That would be very helpful. I think just so people can kind of get a feel for the things that you notice these stressed emotional times are doing to your work, and they affect all of us. There's nobody exempt from this. We are all affected. Now, let me give you a little bit of an example here. I want to show you something, and I'm going to give you a quick opportunity. In the chat box, I want you to take a look at this picture, and I want you to brainstorm in the chat box, what are all the things that this picture can be? I'm going to count 30 seconds on this. What are all the things that this picture can be? Put them in the chat box. Street, road, word game, tire tracks, words, wheel of fortune puzzle, a seating chart, cool, line of ants. Walking side by side, great. That's about good. That's about 30 seconds. So why did I ask you to do this? I asked you to do this because, you know, if I give a group of kids in an elementary school this task to do, I get at least as much generation as you did. And I think as we do this, we realize how our creativity gets constrained. Activities and exercises like this help open people up, help prime the pump of creativity. It is not the case that we strengthen ourselves always by focusing on the immediate work things we have to deal with. Sometimes we have to give ourselves the opportunity to just take a step back, open up our thinking to other things. It's very, very powerful. And so exercises that help us get more creative then open us up to being more creative in the context of our work. So we are engaged in caregiving in stressful contexts that the working world is called VUCA: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And you'll notice that this term was coined by Warren Bennis and colleague in 1985. So the point really is that this is not a completely new situation that we're in, that we've been in VUCA before. And because we've been in VUCA before, we understand how to deal with VUCA situations. It requires the antidote, which is vision, understanding, clarity, and courage, and adaptability. And so that's what we want to focus on, recognizing that when we're in these difficult, stressful times, there are certain sets of things that when we do them, help to mitigate the stress we're feeling and help us to be more effective than we otherwise would be. So here is, just a second, sorry to get this, okay. So let's think about the skills that are needed by children and caregivers to promote positive health and mental health. This is the definition of the skills of social and emotional learning. These 5 skills have been identified by CASEL, CASEL.org, Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning. And these are the basic 5 skill areas that all of us need for life success. These skills are relevant from the time our little ones are born and come into the earth until the time we depart from the earth. And they include things like being able to identify our emotions, to know how we feel about things and accurately label them, to be able to manage our strong emotions, to be able to establish and achieve goals, to be able to overcome obstacles and not get thrown off by obstacles. Social awareness is our ability to show understanding and empathy for each other, and to be able to understand how other people are feeling, to be able to look at them and accurately label how they're feeling. This, by the way, is a lost art because so many kids grow up to be so self-focused that they look at other people and they think other people feel the way they want them to be feeling, as opposed to how they're actually feeling. So we spend a lot of time teaching kids how to identify emotions in others. Because if you can't accurately identify and label emotions in other people, you are going to be impaired in your ability to succeed in life. And so that means that although there are many kinds of vocabulary we want to build in our kids, we want to build their emotion vocabulary explicitly and carefully. So I just want to cover the 2 other skills. Responsible decision-making. We've got to be good problem solvers because we don't know when the next pandemic is coming. We don't know when the next heat wave is coming. We don't know when the next crazy storm is coming. We don't know when the next power outage is coming. We all need to have great problem-solving skills for the next thing that's bound to happen, even though we don't know what and when it's going to be. And finally, relationship skills, because everything we do that matters happens in a group. The idea that kids are independent is a misnomer. Their independence is really more autonomy, that they're able to do things on their own, but you never lose your connection to other people. And so we need our kids to have powerful relationship skills. So let me go back to the building of feelings. Take a look at this picture. And if you had to give this picture a caption, what caption would you give this picture? Put it in the chat box. What would be the caption that you would give this picture? Amber, I see your question about whether we can receive the PowerPoint, and I think we can try to make arrangements for that. We'll follow up on that. Grandpa watching, unconditional love. I've got my eye on you, right? Generational love, pure love, right? So that's the emotion that you're seeing, right? The emotion of love is coming through in this picture very clearly. And we want our kids to be able to look at this picture. So do me one other favor. What in the picture are you looking at that is communicating love most powerfully to you? How is it that when you look at this picture, it's love that you're seeing? The eyes, the cheekbone, closeness, eyes, right? Right. Body language, expression. You see, I think it's, you'll forgive me for being biased about this because of my daughter, but I think early educators are a very special group of people. It is true that the National Association for Education of Young Children has long identified the skills that other people are just discovering. I think we come into this work with young children with special sensitivities that many other people don't have. And so not everyone has the ability to really look at what's happening around them and discern, well, why am I picking up these emotions? Because, if you don't look carefully at the picture, you won't get it. You got to look carefully at the picture. And then you have to have a good emotion vocabulary in order to label this with true depth and nuance. So just as a lark, I'll just show you. This is the actual caption to the picture. It's from Guinea. For news of the heart, ask the face. Right? Not that there's no right answer to this, obviously. So here's something else. Let me give you a piece of practical advice that is a direct corollary to what we're talking about. Read the pictures first. We are so obsessed with getting the kids to be college literate as 3-year-olds that we are missing the opportunity to teach them about the world around us. So when I work with early educators and parents of young children, I tell them, read the pictures first. Take a look at the picture of the cat in the hat. What are some words that describe to you how that cat is feeling? Put in the chat box. How's the cat feeling? What words would describe the cat's feelings? Self-assured, pleasant, happy and relaxed, confident, friendly, happy and curious, happy with himself, content, right? So you understand, most kids will look at that picture and say the cat's happy. But the cat's more than happy. There's a confidence, there's a contentment. Do any of you see any mischievousness in the cat? And if so, where in the picture do you see mischievousness? Hands, the folded hands. Yep. The way those hands, the eyes and the eyebrows, right? All right. So you get my point. Before you read the text, go through the book. These fantastic illustrators of children's books have made such unbelievable pictures. Point to the picture. How do you think the cat is feeling? What do you think the cat's hands are telling us? What do you think the cat's eyes are telling us? What do you think the cat's mouth is telling us? You do that and you're teaching your kids emotion vocabulary, emotion recognition from the very early age. You're getting them conditioned to look at different parts of people and interpret. Now, obviously, the cat's not a people, but there are kids in the book, and you can look at their feelings, especially as the cat starts creating the unbelievable mischief in the house. There's some wonderful expressions on the parts of the kids. So whether it's Horton or the Lorax or the Grinch or Happy Birthday to You, all these books and all other children's books help kids learn to read feelings and the signs of different feelings. And if kids can't do it in a book, how are they going to do it at the speed of life? Right? Because, life doesn't stand still and enable you to point. And the electronic books, where the bubble comes up and tells you how the characters are feeling. Last time I was in a playground with young children, there weren't bubbles coming up. with telling people how they're feeling. You got to figure this stuff out. And this is the most critical and fundamental thing that kids need. So beyond the skill building, if we're tuned into the social and emotional needs of kids, we recognize that there's something else going on. And here is what social and emotional learning is telling us now that kids need and you, the caregivers, need to open the door to learning and mental health. Number one, the need to be seen and heard. Even young kids need to know that they don't have to go to unbelievable lengths to get adults' attention. Kids need to contribute, and caregivers need to contribute. So, you know, it's not enough to just do our jobs. We want to be part of something bigger. When kids are putting something away, they're not just putting something away, they're making their classroom better. And they need to understand that even before they can understand it, because they come to feel in a nonverbal way that they're part of something bigger. Our kids need to be reassured and have what we call optimistic future-mindedness. We need to give our kids reassuring messages. Even if we ourselves are very pessimistic, we've got to watch out how we pass that along to our kids. Our kids don't need detail. Young kids do not need detail. They just need us to say you're safe. They need us to say things are going to get better. If we say it in a convincing way, they believe it. And if they believe it, that opens the door to learning and mental health. SEL tells us that everybody needs to receive and give caring, kindness, help, and appreciation. So implicit in that, let's not be so critical of each other. Let's not be so picky to each other. Let's lead with caring, kindness, help, and appreciation. Let's not have a high threshold for appreciation. Let's lower the bar for what's appreciated. Those of you who are supervisors, when people are just doing their job or barely doing their job, they should get appreciation. We are too stingy with appreciation, and yet now more than ever, people need it. And they need to know that help is available. That if you're having trouble, it's not going to be an indicator of your incompetence. We're going to write you up on a record. No, we are all having a hard time doing our best, and we need to help each other do our best. That relates to the need to be understood with empathy and compassion, to recognize that I am in trauma, beset by strong emotions and worries. And that means young kids. We don't always know everything that young kids experience before we see them. A lot of kids go through a lot before we see them. And a lot of our colleagues are going through a lot before we see them. And so I think the default should be that people are having a tough time. And so they need extra empathy and compassion. Now, here's the one that I think is so important. The need to have things repeated to me patiently and caringly, even though I should have heard it before. Remember what we said earlier, under the conditions of COVID, listening goes down. And it goes down for everybody. It also goes down for the kids. So we are going to say things to kids, and we're going to say it twice, and then they're going to act as if we didn't say it. And then our tendency was, I told you. Don't say I told you. Don't say I told you. Because if they knew you told them, they would have done it. So for them, when you repeat it for the third time, it's like the first time. And by the way, that's going to be true for our colleagues. That people with extraordinarily good memories are not going to process everything they're told when they're told. Because that is an effect of COVID. Not that you had COVID and you're impaired, but it's the stress complex around COVID that leads us to not be able to listen as carefully and accurately as we should, or as we like to, or even as we think we did. So when you say something and someone says to you, and someone says, did you hear that? They'll say, yeah, but they probably didn't. So it may be wiser, if something's really important, to make sure people need a lot of information, say, well, let's go over it together to make sure. And then these are conversations that we have, wider conversations, so that people understand that I'm not picking on you. I recognize we're all in stressful times, all got a lot going on. We're all, bandwidth is taxed. So some of these details that are important, I just want to make sure we've gotten them. I want to make sure I've communicated them clearly. I want to make sure you understand them. So humor me, and then we'll all be more effective, right? And there's more. Kids need to create things. Kids need to have tangible things that they can show and touch more than ever. It's grounding for kids to be able to have an outlet for their talents and to be able to do stuff. The doing of stuff, to get involved in an activity where they make something, whether it's a painting or a mural or a mosaic or build whatever it is, depending on a kid's abilities and interests, they get occupied in that task. And when they get occupied in that task, a lot of their troubles just sort of fade to the background. And also the need for silliness. Humor is unbelievably helpful for creativity, and it is biologically incompatible with stress. We do not feel stress while we're engaged in humor. The stress may come back very quickly, but while we're engaged in humor, it is a wonderful stress reducer. And it's a lot more fun than anger control and stress management. So please don't, just because the times around us are overly serious, don't feel we have to translate that into over seriousness. Be silly, it's helpful. And we want to be in a place of sharing mutual help and support, building a climate of comfort and respect. This is about our workplaces and the homes we want to encourage parents to create. Sharing, mutual helping, and support. That's what this is all about. We need to help each other. We need to be available to each other. We need to encourage parents to have other people to reach out to. Again, a person is a person through other people. We are not expected to do all this alone. We have to help people have connections. And so, I just will tell you, I have a big problem with the concept and language of learning loss. I feel it is a very harmful concept. And so let's address spirit loss. Show me what I can do, not what I have lost. Let's be encouraging and not remediative, right? Remediation is not what people need right now. What people need now is encouragement and to build upon their strengths and to be able to do really good and important things. So there's a couple more things that SEL is telling us to do. Help me make a transition from my home and every day into the schools, into our centers, into our routines and songs. I can't tell you how these routines that we have in early childhood settings are so tremendously reassuring for kids. And how when you get parents to set up routines in the house, it is so extraordinarily reassuring for kids. They want to sort of get drawn in to the structure because it serves as tremendously relieving. And again, just remember that not only don't we listen well, we don't always retrieve what we know, we won't always access our best skills. So we, as well as kids, need more tangible prompts, cues, reminders, lots of reminders. We need to be writing ourselves more Post-it notes. I've got Post-it notes of every color around me, and I've got them on my computer. I got them all over the place. Why? Because I know there's just stuff I'm not going to remember if I don't have it. So let's keep that in mind. So that gets us to the fact that there are some high leverage coping strategies that you can encourage people to use and use yourself. Number one, regular de-stressing and mindfulness. Mindfulness is extraordinarily valuable. When I work with schools, I see the schools that have been most successful in dealing with COVID are schools that have a mindful moment at the beginning of the day, a mindful moment at the middle of the day, a mindful moment at the end of the day. Literally, it's 1 or 2 minutes where people engage in some visioning and breathing. and it has the effect of lowering our stress level. And even though our stress levels will go up, if we're in a position of taking a moderate stress level, lowering it, have it rise to a moderate stress level, it's very different than having a moderate stress level, going to a high stress level, going to an intolerable stress level. Mindfulness keeps the stress manageable and therefore makes us more available for learning and effective functioning. Opportunities for reflection. The more we have an opportunity to reflect on what's happening to us, the better we're able to process it and the better we're able to manage the next day. So we've encouraged many parents to have a bedside diary. Reflect on what's happened with your kid, what's gone well, what's been challenging. Just to be able to write it down right before they go to bed. And they could do it on their devices, but it's better for them not to be using their devices right before they go to bed. So encourage literally a written bedside diary and just expressing those things, the things that have gone well, the things that have been challenging, serves as a stress reducer, better prepares us for the next day. People need opportunity to express COVID emotions and to tell COVID stories, including positive stories. I mean, COVID, there have been some good things that have happened through COVID that benefit from being talked about. We do want to understand that as long as COVID still seems to be around us, that to the extent possible, kids understand the biology and logistics of COVID. If we're asking kids to wear masks, we should explain to them in language they can understand why we're doing this, why it's important, why it's keeping some really bad things that are right there that you can't see, but they're right outside your mask. It's keeping them away from you. That's why you have to wear your mask. And that's why wearing your mask on your chin doesn't help you. Got to be over your nose, over your mouth. Right? Encourage kids in positive goal setting. So here's the thing about optimistic future mindedness, right? If we're engaging in a goal, if we're talking about what we're going to do tomorrow, it means we're going to be together tomorrow and we're going to be able to do that stuff. If we can talk about what's going to happen the rest of the week, next week, or what's going to happen next week, this is incredibly powerful. Even if kids don't really understand the concept of a week, they understand that you're talking about the future and that these are good things that are going to happen in the future. They pick it up from your tone of voice. They pick it up from your body language. And then it helps the kids feel more engaging. And the same thing is true for us as caregivers. If we have a clear sense of what we're going to do tomorrow, if we know there are things that we're going to try to do the rest of the week and next week, we then develop a little bit more optimistic future mindedness, right? By the way, if you have questions at any point in time, please put them in the chat. I'll try to get to them if I see them, or we'll get to them at the end. All right, so I just want to literally ask you to think about the value of prompting, cueing, and giving reminders. Reminders to parents, reminders to your supervisees, reminders to your colleagues. I like to view people as amnesiacs. It's an extreme thing, but when I think that someone's an amnesiac, that means that I've said something, but I don't expect them to remember. So then the question is, how do I remind them? So for example, for young kids, if we want them to listen, we talk to them about getting into listening position. And listening position is where you put your rear end somewhere near a seat, you face the source of the sound. And that's what little kids can do to make it more likely they're going to listen. When we want kids to calm down when they're upset, we teach them a strategy. So for very young kids, sometimes we say, okay, you know what? To help calm down, we're going to smell the pizza. And we have them imagine that they got a pizza in front of them and they inhale, they stop, and they exhale. We want to get our kids to calm down. We have everybody smell the pizza, right? We could have said to them, and here's a breathing strategy you can use when you want to calm down. It's good, but it's better to help them smell the pizza. And so when we want them to remember to ask for help, we develop a strategy. If we want to have them show caring, we develop a strategy. Use these ideas liberally. Prompting strategies can make a very, very big difference. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to go a little bit ahead. I will share with you a resource, social decision-making, problem solving for grades K to 1, has a number of activities of the kind that we've talked about: emotion vocabulary building, smelling the pizza, and learning how to recognize feelings and learning how to speak in a certain tone of voice, all that stuff. There are ample resources to help make that more structured for you. I just want to talk briefly about literacy and social emotional learning. So, there can sometimes be a misunderstanding about the fact that social emotional learning is actually strongly connected to kids' ability to be literate. And it starts very young. It starts with emotion vocabulary, because emotion vocabulary is not just how kids read, it's how they see the world. When kids have a limited emotion vocabulary, they see the world as sad, mad, and glad. But they need to learn nuance. They need to learn that there's a difference between disappointment and sadness, between frustration and anger, between amusement and happiness. And so if our kids don't see nuance, this is why kids tend to react in a way that appears to be overreaction to other people. So I'm sure you've been in classrooms where one kid will hit another kid. And you'll say, why did you do that? And the kid will say, well, he was going to hurt me. He threatened me. That is a direct product of a kid looking at another kid and seeing anger and potential harm instead of a more nuanced feeling. So what this kid did, in a way, is perfectly justified, because this kid really believed that I was going to get hurt by that other kid, that this other kid was angry at me, was going to do something to me. But of course, the rest of us didn't see it that way, because it wasn't that way. But we have to understand that the problem here is the lack of an emotional vocabulary and the gradual building up of nuance in the world. Obviously, for young children, there's a limit to how far we get with this. But all the steps matter. George Spivak and Myrna Shore have really been champions in the kids' strategic vocabulary and concept building. They recommend that we spend a lot of time teaching kids, preschoolers, how to ask for help, how to use your words, how to help other people, how to thank other people, how to talk about what they did, and how to show concern. And these are things that are essential mastery areas for young children that we want to make sure they get good at, because this is a springboard for the kinds of social skills they're going to certainly need in elementary school and beyond. And then they outline these 8 words as 8 words that we want to make sure our preschoolers are good at and know and can differentiate. And I want to point especially to proud. I have worked with too many kids who cannot identify what they're proud of about themselves, what they're proud of about what they did. Getting kids to connect to that emotion of proud and pride is so important to building up their self-concept and self-esteem, right? I mean, if we didn't feel proud of anything we did, we would not walk around as happy, competent people. And same thing is true for kids. And there are a lot of kids who come from difficult backgrounds, where there isn't a focus on what they did right, there's a focus on what they did wrong, what they could have done that they didn't do. Somewhere along the way, we have to make sure to help kids focus on what they can do, what they did do. Doesn't have to be a big thing, right? And you know this, you've worked with kids. I can tell you, recently, my grandson mastered climbing a rock wall, my 7-year-old grandson. And he is so proud of that. And that's a fantastic feeling. But kids get pride from little things too, being able to tie a shoelace, being able to reach something they couldn't reach before. We want them to identify and label that feeling. It is so critical for their future. And here I just want to show you what has been built into Sesame Street that builds social and emotional literacy. These concepts, is and is not, same and different, can and cannot, may and may not, and or and else, some or all, before, after, next. So if kids have these skills, they are incredible scaffolds for human relationships and problem solving. They literally create brain architecture. So when people say, oh, Sesame Street improves early literacy, how does that happen? It happens because the kids get these concepts. And as they get these concepts, they understand stories better. And so then the words start to mean more to them than just individual words. And that's what has to happen for kids to love reading. They can't labor over each word. They've got to see how these words connect to create things. And that's what these critical linking concepts do. So if you spend time with Spivak and Schur's fabulous material for preschool kids, focusing on these word pairs, you are giving kids extraordinary stuff for the future. Now, let me just show you a quick example of what this looks like. You show kids a picture of a cat, rat, bat, table, chair, and dog. Right? You ask kids, who can tell us which pictures sound the same as cat? Point to all the pictures that sound the same as cat. Point to some of the pictures that sound the same as cat. Point to a picture that does not sound the same as cat. Point to all the pictures that do not sound the same as rat. So you see, in this very simple thing that kids will take as a game, we're teaching them these amazingly important cognitive skills that help them differentiate the world and make it a more nuanced place. Right? And there are many more examples of that you'll get in the PowerPoint. All right. I know we've got just a couple more minutes. I'm going to stop at 11, and if you have time for questions, we can. I just want to share with you a couple of parenting tips. There are 4 tips for emotionally intelligent caregiving. Some of this we've covered before, but they're important. Number 1, everybody needs to remember the COVID context. Think of every household as VUCA, and therefore be flexible and forgiving of yourself, your colleagues, and family members. Right? This is of critical, basic importance. Tip number 1. Tip number 2 is, that's tip number 3. Tip number 2, kids only know what you show. So be extra positive. When we are so proud of what our kids did, but we don't tell them, they really don't know. So we have to remember that even though we're exhausted and even though we're feeling this feeling, we've got to communicate our positive feelings to our kids. And it's a corollary of number 3, which is apologize when you lose your cool. We're all going to lose our cool with our kids, and we must apologize for losing our cool, not apologize because what the kid did that they shouldn't have done wasn't right, but our reaction was too much. So we have to apologize to kids when we lose our cool, because we don't want our kids to think that that's the predominant way we feel about them. And it's the same thing as monitoring your trigger situations. Your trigger situations are the situations that kids repeatedly do that drive you up the wall. You got to know what those are. And those are the situations when we're at our worst, when we're parenting. And so we have to first do no harm. Don't keep doing what you've been doing in those situations. Stop doing it. Put yourself in timeout. Don't put your kid in timeout. And then the fourth bullet point, establish a call or text buddy for tough times. Encourage all the parents you work with to have someone that they can call or text when their trigger situations are getting to them. Because what I found in my research and my direct work with families is that one person's trigger situation, another person knows how to deal with. They may have their own trigger situation that they can't deal with, but they know how to deal with yours. So when a given parent has 2 or 3 people that they can call or text at any time for parenting help, they can master a lot of situations that are difficult for them. So really try to encourage and set that up. Parenting tip number 3, be organized. Routines and limits matter. Encourage people to create routines around bedtimes, around what happens in the morning, around getting dressed, around having breakfast and other meals, around what happens after school. As many things as possible. Routines reduce stress, provide security, teach responsibility, and then revisit them, right? Because everything is changing in our lives. So a routine that works for a couple of weeks may not continue to work forever. So regularly talk about the routines, have problem-solving meetings. We're going to just look at how things are going in the house, and let's see if we want to make any changes. And above all, make your kids helpers. Make your kids helpers. They want to help, even though they will give you a hard time. I've been to some, and you know this, you've been to preschool settings where all kids have jobs, right? Some kids put out the mats that we're going to sit on. Some kids put out the napkins for the snacks. Some kids pour the juice. Some kids follow around the kids with the juice with paper towel because the juice is going to spill, right? We know all that. The more routines, the better. And finally, humor. It is critically important to have humor in your house. Find time to laugh or smile together. Make non-contingent fun a presence in your household, like vitamins. We don't have vitamins on a certain day if we're feeling good about it or if we're feeling happy. If you have vitamins every day, you need non-contingent fun every day. We got to have a little humor every day. Right? This is a picture of my 11-year-old grandson when he was a preschooler and thought that being Jake of Jake and the Neverland Pirates was the absolute best thing in the world. And above all, follow the 24-karat golden rule. Do unto your children as you would have others do unto your children. Very powerful, because there are things that we would do and say to our own kids that if someone else said it, we'd kill them. So keep that 24-karat golden rule in mind. Do unto your children as you would have others do unto your children. And you're going to end up in a lot better place. All right. So let me invite you to have some reflections, questions. Are we okay on time to take a couple of questions?
Yes, we're good. Thanks.
Yes, we're good.
Okay. So you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to stop the share, and this way, if anybody does have a question, you can just ask it. You can unmute and ask it. Question or a comment or a reflection. Just go ahead and unmute.
I'm seeing in the chat that everyone thinks it was such a great presentation, and I do agree. There's a statement that says this was incredible. Thank you very much. It certainly was enlightening and incredible to me as well.
Well,
Great tips, great strategies.
I appreciate that, of course.
Someone is asking, can you display the curriculum text information again?
Which, yes, I can do that. I can go back and do that. All right, let me go back and do that. I just want to plug in my computer because I'm getting a low power message. So give me a quick second to do that. Okay. All right. So let me get back into the screen share for a sec.
While Dr. Elias is doing that, I would just like to say that if anybody, since I don't have everybody's email, we didn't sign up in advance for this session. So if you would like me to send you the recording, if you'd like to share it with your staff, please email me at Nancy Thompson, THOMSON @ccc-nj.org, and I will forward you the recording. I put my email address in the chat.
Okay. And Nancy, then if I'm able to create the PowerPoint, I can send that to you as well.
Okay, great. Then I'll send it both out to everybody, if anybody that requests it.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to make sure folks have my contact information. So this way, if there is anything you want to follow up on, please feel free to do that, right? So maurice.elias@rutgers.edu is my email address, and then our lab, our SECD lab, contains many resources. Let me go back and find what you asked me to display. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the curriculum for K1 that has a lot of very practical activities in it, developed by early childhood educators. It's published by Research Press. And let me immodestly show you something else. This is a book called Talking Treasure. This is a book created by Vera Hankin and Devorah Omer, who are two professional storytellers. And they've taken a number of old stories and they've kind of modernized them. And they're great to read to young children. And in fact, one of the widest uses of this book is to have older kids, like 8 or 9 or 10-year-old kids, reading to their preschool kids these stories. You know, one of my favorites is a story called Mr. Pot's Crack, where there are these two water pots that people lug water in. Of course, they're animated, and one water pot develops a crack, and all of his water comes out, and he's very depressed and unhappy about the fact that he can no longer carry water. But then and this is an example we were talking about in terms of being reassuring and optimistic. The other pot says, but look, where your water has dripped, things are growing. So even though you can't carry the water, you are now making a contribution by helping so much to grow on the path. And of course, now Mr. Potts extremely excited about the fact that he has a new higher purpose. So there's lots of wonderful stories, cute stories like that with wonderful illustrations that are helping to build our emotional intelligence in young children, and they won't even know it. And of course, gives you an opportunity to read the pictures before the text. Okay, so just a quick. So I just would say as a final word, you know, I think that children are like flowers, that they grow toward the light. And it is our job, wherever possible, to provide and encourage that light for kids, no matter what the circumstances are. And COVID makes it challenging. But, you know, as we've talked about, we've had challenges before. And if we know what we're dealing with, we can have an antidote to VUCA and provide as much light to kids as possible. Right.
Again, Dr. Elias, we thank you so much for coming with us this morning and sharing this awesome presentation. And don't be surprised if we call you back to do it again. So thank
Not a
you so
problem.
much.
That's my pleasure. And again, please do feel free to follow up on anything that I've said.
There is a question that was in there about, it says, I see the listing of your books. Do you include early childhood preschool instead of just beginning with kindergarten? So maybe a quick
Well, you
last
know, I'll
question.
tell you, I mentioned Myrna Shore and George Spivak. Shore, S-H-U-R-E. Myrna Shore has the best stuff for preschoolers of anybody. And so we're not competing with her. Get her stuff for preschoolers, and you could start transitioning to our stuff for kindergarten, K1 if you like. But her stuff is just so good. She has been a mentor to me and has informed so much of my work. Her professional beginnings was as a preschool teacher. So she's got this down. So that's why you don't see much from me explicitly around preschool. You know, obviously Talking Treasure can be used for preschool age kids. They'll enjoy hearing the stories starting at age 4, particularly. And Emotionally Intelligent Parenting and the parenting resources, including that book in Spanish, certainly include preschool.
Great. Thank you so much.
All
That
right.
was fabulous.
Sure.
Lots of good information for all of us to really think about and tweak our practices.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for inviting me, and I hope you have an enjoyable summer and deal with the heat well. And I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And again, if you have any questions and would like to reach out to him, please do so, and or to the NJECE Alliance. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Nancy, thank you as always.
Thank you.